Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Ask the Expert session. This is for Digital Breakout 132. It's a continuation of the conversation about amplifying your pro developer skills with the Power Platform. My name is Sharon. I'm going to go over some quick housekeeping items, and then we will get started with our experts. So quickly, how to engage with our experts. Please enter your questions in the chat. The questions will appear to you in the attendee view once we have gone through our moderation process. Please use the thumbs up button to let us know that that is a question that you want to see answered or that many of you want to have answered. We'll do our best to answer them as quickly as we can. You will see answers both in chat or answered verbally by our team. We will also provide you with various resources in the chat so that you can continue to learn throughout the session and later on. We will be recording this session so that you can watch the recording later on, and we ask that you please do not spam the chat or post inappropriate comments. The Microsoft Code of Conduct has been posted in the chat, and it is up on the screen for your viewing as well. As I mentioned, we will be recording this session, so please do not photograph or video the session on your side. And with that, let's meet our experts. Per, would you like to kick it off?
I would be delighted to kick it off. So thank you everybody for joining. I love these sessions a lot, also because we get to be called experts in these, so that's good. My name is Per Mikkelsen. I'm a PM on the Pro Dev and Publisher AsDB Experience team, where our sole focus is really to make life more wonderful and better. To enable pro developers and citizen developers to dance the app dance together and co-develop applications. But I got a bunch of other experts on the call here that can help answer these questions, and I'll let each of them introduce themselves. Brady?
Sure. I'm Brady Gaster. I am a principal PM in the .NET team. I build tools for devs who like to build APIs, who like to use those APIs to back up Power Apps. So that's why I'm here today. Pierce.
Hey everybody, I'm Pierce Bogan, Principal Program Manager in Developer Division. And so we make, surprise, lots of things that make your life better as a developer. So we make IDEs and code editors like Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, languages and runtimes like .NET and TypeScript like Brady just said. As well as some Azure services. And I specifically work on developer tools for the Teams app platform. And I'm working with all the wonderful folks here on enabling collaboration between citizen and pro devs. Super excited to be here.
Haley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Haley Heber. I'm a program manager on Per's team, actually, so helping out with the pro developer and publisher experiences on the Power Platform. Super excited to be here. I don't think Julie's able to attend this session, but hopefully all of us will help answer any questions that you have. Between all of us, we should be able to cover all of them. Thank you so much. We'll start with one of the first questions. If Brady, you said you had a whole bunch that you saw that you liked. Do you want to start?
Sure. Did Greg do an intro or did I miss that one?
Oh, yeah, we didn't get Greg on the slide. Greg!
Coming in at the last possible minute. Hi, yeah, my name is Greg Hurlman. I'm one of the developer advocates for Power Platform for anything pro developer. So if you're a developer looking to build tools for our makers to build tools to help run their business, I want to talk to you and help you out, and that's why I'm here today. That said, let's go ahead and get to the questions.
Cool. I've got a few I want to try to answer here. As Pierce said, he and I work in the DevDiv division, so we build tools and frameworks and runtimes and such to make pro dev and API dev lives easier. One of the things that I've worked on is the publishing tools inside of Visual Studio to make it easier for folks to publish their APIs into API management. So I want to take a few of those questions. Are there good examples or documentation for creating the API code? We actually have a great sample out there. I don't know if Pierce has a URL handy, but we have one. It was our build demo where we did the I think it was called Develop with Purpose, where Jeff talked about the COVID application. like kind of a COVID screening app. In that application, we actually have API hosted, or API fronted rather, APIs that are deployed to Azure App Service. These are actually ASP.NET Core Web API backends that talk to a Cosmos DB database. So it's just kind of an example of architecture that you could take a peek at. And there are other ones that we could definitely get out. So there's actually some doc updates we're looking to make in this capacity. There was one other question about accessing APIs inside of my private network. Again, referring to API management, if you have a premium SKU, I think it's premium API management, you can get to VNet resources. So you could actually have your API management reach inside to your corporate network and actually access APIs that you might have on servers inside your firewall. So you do have that capability. So I'll be watching for API questions, but I'll turn it over to the other experts to see if they have any answers for other questions in there.
Yeah, I can. There will always be license questions here, so I'll I'll take one of those. With standard 365 license, can I develop own connectors, or do I need a premium Power App license? The short and well, there's rarely a short answer to license questions. With what we call a seeded license, i.e., what we just announced around Project Oakdale and what you can do with Power Apps inside Teams, what we refer to as Project Oakdale. With that license, you can now create and use Azure API management-based connectors that connect to Azure backend without a premium Power App license, as long as you play that app only in the context of Teams. That means that it's still a premium license requirement as soon as you are over in the Power App Maker experience, or the Power Apps player, as we call it. So custom connectors are still a premium feature. Azure API management-based connectors in Project Oakdale is not. Let's see what else we have. There's another one here. Can you summarize the license changes, if any? I actually think that is exactly what I just did. So now you can use Azure API management backed connectors that connect to Azure services without premium licenses, as long as it is in the context of Team. That's really the biggest announcement. That was previously considered just a custom connector. Is just like everything else. It is no longer considered just a custom connector. So it is now available with your seeded Teams license. Is there currently, Brady, why don't you take this one? Is there currently a way to push the APIM API to Power Platform in an automated fashion, whether that be via ARM template, Power Platform build tools for Azure DevOps, or through the Azure Management REST APIs?
I could tell you how to do almost all of those ways, quite frankly. You could do this inside of an ARM template, so you could absolutely deploy an ARM template. And I was actually chatting with one of the directors from the GitHub Actions team this morning, and he was showing me some really cool actions that you can run to actually do some of that stuff, to actually party on either the to party on the Azure CLI commands, which I'll come back to, or the Azure PowerShell commands, or they've even got an ARM deployment command set that you can actually use inside of GitHub Actions. So if you're in a GitHub Actions CI/CD environment, you can totally do that. I mentioned the Azure CLI, going back to, I guess it was like the second version a couple of weeks ago. The API management team added a few really great commands to the APIM command set, if you will, in the Azure CLI, so that now you can do things like import like an Open API URL or an Open API file directly into API management. So if you can think about using GitHub Actions to run Azure CLI commands, you could put those in there. If you're working inside of Visual Studio, like I mentioned earlier, you can actually right-click, publish your stuff up to App Service and then into API management. We want to get the GitHub Actions stuff augmented with the API management commands as well. I don't have an ETA on that, but eventually we're going to make that automatic for you inside the tooling. Just don't have that right now. I will be putting out a blog post on how to do that pretty soon. So I would just keep keep watching me on Twitter or keep watching Payer on Twitter, and we'll get that account out there. And I'll make sure Greg amplifies it, since most of the people here that are doing pro dev are watching Craig's stuff. So he's got a great demo on SignalR, by the way. I cannot stress enough. Go watch his demo on SignalR.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot, Brady. Appreciate it. And you mentioned GitHub Actions quite a few times, which leads really well into the next question here, which is also would love more details on better/new ways to integrate GitHub and the Power Platform. We got good news for you. We just announced the release of, or the public preview of GitHub Actions for the Power Platform. So for any of you that have followed what we've been doing DevOps wise on the Power Platform, earlier this year we released the Power Platform build tools, which was basically a set of Azure DevOps extensions to make it simpler to set up pipelines, to set up CI/CD for when you're building on the Power Platform. We just announced public preview of GitHub Actions that effectively does the same thing. So you're going to have GitHub Actions that imports a solution, exports a solution, packs a solution, unpacks a solution, and so forth. So that should make it a lot simpler to integrate GitHub and the Power Platform. And I think in the session that Julia Strauss did, she also showed how you can now actually also build a CI/CD self-service app using the Power Platform with Power Apps and Power Automate and the GitHub connector to enable self-service scenarios for CI/CDs, because you don't want your citizen developers to have to learn Git and PRs and branching and all this wonderful stuff that GitHub offers. So you can actually build that abstraction. So your citizen developers, they just use the self-service app that is under the hood is using GitHub Actions and the GitHub connector, but they're never exposed to the complexity of Git. And then in the same along the same lines, will it be easy to set up delivery pipelines in Azure DevOps with any new features announced at Ignite? We didn't announce anything specifically for Azure DevOps. We're still supporting that. We're still going to have a one-to-one mapping or support between the Azure DevOps Actions, Azure DevOps Task and the GitHub Actions. But I think as far as Azure DevOps goes, it's relatively it's relatively friendly, because you have the UI to build your pipelines, and you can drag in these tasks that we have in the Power Platform build tools. So that should make it relatively simple. And I'll drop a link to the build tools as well. Anyone else want to take a stab at any of the questions?
I've answered a few in chat, but.
Excellent.
Yeah, I saw one in here that was asking essentially, what benefits do I get by using API management? Like, why would I want to put my APIs into API management? And I think that's a great question. I mean, obviously, Pear already said, hey, this is the easiest way for you to call your APIs from inside of the Power Platform. And for me, that's a big enough reason. But I think there's a whole bunch of other things. And if you go look, just Google API management like features, there's a ton in there. And there's so many things you get. Like, I think one of the things as I talk to more and more developers, it's like, how as a citizen developer and even as a pro developer, do I know what APIs are deployed inside of my organization? And it can be so hard to discover those. And the thing that I really like about API management is you can kind of create a registry almost of all the APIs that are available internally. And then by putting them in API management, they're accessible from inside of the Power Platform. And then you get a whole bunch of other awesome stuff too. Like, there's a whole bunch of governance features, security features, analytics. I can even do things like cache responses so that I get improved latency when I call my APIs. So there's a whole bunch of really cool things like that. And then, of course, some management and dev features as well. Brady, did I miss anything there? I think there's a lot of reasons that I would want to put an API inside of API management, even beyond just this Power Platform scenario.
Those are all really big reasons. If you want to do anything with logic apps, then you would have kind of drag and drop capability. There's an API management extension for VSCode that enables you to do things like you can actually debug the policies. So you can set up policies and say, Pierce can access this operation, Greg can't can't use this one, Pear can't use any of them. So, you can actually set up that level of control, and then you can actually use those the VS Code extension to actually debug how those policies will work whenever you send it a request. So you can actually see the request going in and then what it'll do and then how it comes out. So that's another benefit. We are doing some really interesting things around the concept of API design first with API management right now. So if you like the idea of being able to like visually design your API in something like the Azure portal, and then like generate skeleton source code so that you can get a developer off and running quickly. It's another great way that you might be able to use API management in the future. So stay tuned.
All right, here's one. How can we control access to Power Apps Maker as we're looking to onboard few developers only before allowing gradually all employees to build apps? And this is really a common challenge that you have, that you kind of want to take control of who should be able to build apps and who shouldn't be able, and who shouldn't be able to build apps. So it's really a matter of locking it down and making sure that only the people that you want to have in there can actually go in and start building those apps. So that's a matter of like, who do you assign the licenses out to and so forth. I don't know, Greg or Haley, if you have anything you want to add to that. And if not, then let's see what else.
There was a question in there about, I'll paraphrase it, about further customization of the UI to be able to like really get deeper and do more CSS tweaks and stuff. I didn't know if either Pierce or Greg had ever done anything in that area. I'm the API person, so I haven't done that. So
I'll let Greg take that one. Yeah.
Sure, I can talk about what we can talk about right now. The Power Platform team, Power Apps team, is working on the theming story within Power Apps. So it's definitely kind of what I call having its Bootstrap 2.0 moment, where every Power App kind of looks like a Power App, and we're focused on making that better for our app makers in the future. So right now, custom themes are on the roadmap. We don't have dates, but it is something the team is planning on. For custom controls you might build with Power Apps, the Power Apps component framework, or other things you pull in like that, you can absolutely use whichever CSS and UI framework you want to use to build out those apps. At the end of the day, that's just TypeScript, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. But for out-of-the-box apps, custom themes are coming, but we don't know when exactly yet.
And I'd like to add, I mean, that was great, Greg. I'd like to add as well that if you're building an app, specifically with the new Power Apps plus Teams functionality that we mentioned, that we showed off earlier this week at Ignite, the really cool thing about that is your Power App looks like a native Teams app. And so even in some of these scenarios, we've started to kind of bring this more native looking theming depending on the runtime context for your Power App. So if I'm building a Power App for Teams, it looks as if my Power App was actually built as part of Teams. It's using all the same fluent design principles that I would expect if I was building native Teams integration. And so that's really cool. And it makes it feel as if your Power App is actually part of Microsoft Teams, which I think goes a long way towards the user experience you want to deliver with your Power Apps and Teams.
All right. Thank you. There is one here. I have VS 2019 Enterprise. What else do I need to purchase to use Power Platform in an application? So what you need is you either need what we call a seeded license, so you can start building Power Apps over SharePoint or Excel or anywhere else, or you need a what we call a premium license, i.e. a Power Apps per app or per user license. So it's kind of the other way around. Then you can use VS 2019 to go and extend and build pro code on top of that. But it's Power Apps itself is an online service, so you need to have a subscription one way or another to be able to use Power Platform in your applications. There is another one here. Will Power Apps ever support exporting screens, galleries, or data tables to Excel or PDF natively, or does anyone have any suggestions on easy way to go about exporting these without having to write HTML code to export to Power Automate and convert to PDF? I haven't had luck with getting HTML formatting to work exactly as it should when looking on a web browser versus PCF. I can take 2 seconds of that and then hand it over to probably Greg, I think. One piece that I used to use a lot is the export to Excel feature that you do have over on the model-driven apps. I don't believe we have support for that in the Canvas apps, but you definitely have native export to Excel capabilities over on the model-driven apps. Greg, do you have any clever workarounds on how to solve this in Canvas or in general?
One thing I've seen some customers use is actually using the Power Apps component framework just to expose UI, maybe just a button that says print or something like that, with a number of incoming properties that can get all the information it needs to then make a printable version of whatever the app is looking at that might make sense on paper, right? So the printable version isn't always like you just took a screenshot and printed it out. Usually you want some other sort of functionality to it. And so PCF lets you get into that, receive that event. Okay, somebody wants to print, and now it can either gather information from the properties you passed in, or make additional calls back to get more data, and then output that to the user, maybe as an image or something else that they can use, maybe as a file that can be linked to somehow. So those are really, custom development is definitely the kind of the outlet for that right now. That said, that is something that the team is tracking. If you have that sort of feedback, definitely continue to let us know in places like this or on the Power Apps forums, as it's something we're looking to do a little bit better going forward.
Yeah, and some of it also depends on on what it is that you want it for. We get a lot of requests around better reporting capabilities, more flexibility around that. Power BI is supporting paginated reports now, so you should go and take a look at how you can use Power BI reports to go and create some of that content. That's where I would go look. And at the moment, we're kind of trying to figure out what are the gaps between what we had on SSRS versus what we can do with Power BI. Let's see what else. For someone coming from on-prem SQL Server experience, where can I find resources to help me better understand the common data service? I think, Greg, you might know something about that.
Let's see. There are definitely resources that are out there on Docs and elsewhere around the common data service. It is another way to store your data that is a little more maker friendly, right? Entities are basically tables. The rows are the entity records. You can do lookups, which is the way you do joins and things like that. And there is actually a SQL Server endpoint that is exposed now for the CDS in preview. So if you want to open up something like SQL Server Management Studio to look at your CDS data, you can do that. That said, there are some differences there, but there are kind of amalgams. SQL does it this way, CDS does it that way, not to sound too much like a hacky stand-up comedian. But I will see what some good links I can find to get you started and put them in the Q&A as we go. Per or anyone else, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Nope, it's good stuff. Let's take this one. Do the Azure DevOps task now export and import the AsDB connectors for Canvas apps? I'm not sure that I actually know what AsDB connectors are. If anyone else knows what that is, then please speak up now. Otherwise, I'll just try to answer in general that we
Azure SQL DB, maybe?
Azure SQL DB, yeah, could be.
Yeah.
But the answer is really the same, no matter which of the connectors that we're talking about is. Previously, it has been challenging to work with connectors and the connections for those connectors when you move them, say, from a dev environment to a downstream test or into a production environment. So we've done a couple of things. We've done one thing around connection references. So we abstract that. So we kind of instead of having the connection and the connector in one thing, we use the connector reference to try and understand understand what it is the connector should connect to. So it means that you connect better, you have better connections to between Canvas apps and flows, for instance, and we can plumb it into the right connection when you deploy to a downstream environment. The other piece that might be in this is around custom connectors that they didn't used to be what we call solution aware. So they didn't travel very well in the solutioning system. They are solution aware now. So anyone who's followed this journey we've been on around getting to healthy ALM and truly enable DevOps for the Power Platform, we've kind of like started to take all these different components. We had Power Virtual Agent, Canvas apps, flows, AI builder models, basically everything, all these things that are backed by CDS, and made them all solution aware, made them work the same way, so that you didn't have to think about which DevOps tool or process you should use if you use the Canvas apps versus a model app. So they should all behave the same way. You can add them to a solution, and you can use Azure DevOps, or you can use the GitHub Actions to set up CI/CD for those things. Anyone else want to grab a few?
I've got one question in here. Matt is asking, any plans for enhanced form input field masking on the fly? In other words, currency input field masking, or one question I get a whole lot is maybe partial password masking, things like that. And honestly, that's one of the key opportunities we've seen for the Power Apps component framework. And there's actually, the community's built a number of different things just right up that alley that you can find out on the internets. If you actually go to one of the best websites I've seen with one of the better usernames, or URLs rather, to pcf.gallery, it's got a fantastic community resource for a bunch of PCF controls that have already been created, along with links to solutions you can just import, or GitHub repos if you want to look at the code to build that extra kind of experience that maybe doesn't come out of the box, the text box but with a little extra, or the data table with a little extra, or a button that does something a little bit more. That's perfect for PCF, and it's exactly the sorts of things that are great to build with that framework. Let's see. I don't know if anyone had anything else that they wanted to speak to.
I can grab one here that we get a lot, and that's around the Oakdale features and teams. Can we export Power Apps created using free Oakdale feature and team from one team to another? Any guidance on managing dev, QA, and prod aspect on this? So at the moment, we're figuring out what ALM means as far as Project Oakdale goes. There isn't ALM features enabled for that, so you can't export a solution and test it and run it to another environment and so forth. We're working on figuring out what that means and how it would work. But the way we look at it now is that the team's experience, or the Project Oakdale experience, is optimized for citizen developers that build apps and not necessarily need these ALM features that we got on the what we call CDS full today. So we don't have it, and we're still defining the roadmap for that in terms of what we light up. I'll grab another one here. Could Microsoft partners with DevOps expertise serve as the pro dev part of a Fusion team with client citizen developers? Do you see that being helpful for customers? And I 100% see that being helpful for customers. There is an awful lot of time wasted doing stuff manually that can be automated. For anyone who's familiar with the various tools for DevOps, be that GitHub Actions, or be that Azure DevOps, or other competing offers. So there's definitely value for that, and what we see a lot today around supporting citizen developers are really a lot of the partners, the system integrators that used to go out and help customers build applications. what they do now is they actually help customers getting started building their own center of excellence, helping them making app development a viral thing inside of the organizations. And that includes setting up a center of excellence. It includes setting up the pipelines to be able to work more efficiently, testing and so forth. So I 100% seeing that being helpful for customers, and I applaud and support anyone who wants to go and do that. Absolutely. All right, let's see if there's anything else here. Do Power Apps team have planned to fix the row limit accessing data stored in SharePoint lists or any other data source? I don't know. Does anyone else on the call know that? Otherwise, we'll take that offline.
I think that's above our pay grade.
It's yeah, probably above our pay grade, so we don't know. What else? Here's one for you, Piers. I want to rebuild or Greg. I want to rebuild an old Silverlight / entity framework application. Please provide the appropriate Power App solution to rebuild screens.
Well, on the back end, I would imagine, so I've done some Silver type apps, and what I would imagine there is that, like, from an API perspective, the difference would be, what was that I used, RDS, like a long time ago, Remote Data Service or something like that. For Silverlight, you, instead of doing that, you would use a REST API. So that would be your REST API going to API management or to functions or something like that. So that's the API layer. That's the kind of the similarity. In terms of the UI part, I'm sure that Greg would probably have more commentary there.
Yeah, I would say that if we have a Silverlight or any other sort of application that's built on one of the other UI frameworks that we've had over the years, that's something that you might want to look at just building in straight Power Apps. The Power Apps can give you a lot out of the box without having to write any custom code. And then you can fill in those gaps with custom connectors, as Brady was talking about, or if you need custom UI with the Power Apps component framework, just to get you that last little bit of the way if you had unique experiences in your old UI, especially around Silverlight with some of the stuff you could do. So it's definitely possible, and I would say look at Power Apps to get you most of the way there and see where you need to fill in those gaps.
Thank you. And I'm afraid that we need to wrap up, but we posted a link where you can post your questions to us. So if you didn't get answers to your question in this session, or if our answer wasn't good enough, then feel free to fill that out there, and we will get back to you with an answer to the questions, so we get everything answered. But with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone who joined. I appreciate all the other experts that could join this session, and hope we all learned something today. Thank you.